20 is a necessary assumption question. Argument relies on the assumption that. So I think this one is pretty hard. You have some attractive wrong answer choices. So the way to mitigate the difficulty is what we always do. Identify premise, identify conclusion. Try to see if you can figure out what the gap is between the premise and conclusion before getting confused by the answers, right? Like the answers are not your friend. They're all here to, all but one of them is here to mislead you. And the one correct answer choice is hiding. So the advent of chemical fertilizers led farmers in a certain region to abandon the practice of periodically growing green manure. So stop right there. The advent, right, before we had chemical fertilizers, what were farmers doing? They were growing green manure crops. That's what they were doing. Like what? Well, alfalfa. Here's one example green manure crop. It's called alfalfa. Why are we growing green manure crops? Well, because look, it rejuvenates the soil, right? I mean, I guess I'm not a farmer, but like I can imagine like farmers, what you need to do, you need to make sure that your soil has the right nutrients or whatever it is, atoms in it, to be able to produce corn or wheat or whatever it is that you're growing year after year after year, right? So part of that effort is to grow green manure crop to rejuvenate the soil. Hey, wait, now the advent. Before the advent, there was no chemical fertilizer. Now, with chemical fertilizers, right? Now with chemical fertilizers, we don't do this anymore, right? Like, wow, this is so much work. I just like throw some petrol on my soil and it'll grow fine, right? So that's what this first sentence is telling us. So, okay, as a result, the soil structure in typical farm is now poor, soil structure poor. As a result of what? Right? I think this is the critical question. You need to peg this as a result referential phrase back to its referent. As a result of what? The abandonment. That's as a result of what? See, because now that we have chemical fertilizer, I'm a farmer, I just don't do this. Is labor intensive. This is slow. This occupies my field for like a growing season because now instead of growing corn, it's got alfalfa on it, right? That's not good for my economy, for my economics, right? I'd rather have this. See, as a result of the abandonment of growing green manure crops, that's as a result of what? That's what's causing soil structure to be poor. So premise ends, right? Conclusion. So then what? So if I want to fix this, if I want to fix my poor soil structure, which is what the conclusion is saying, to fix your soil structure, shouldn't I just start growing alfalfa again? Right? Isn't that... Yeah, the answer is yes. You should just grow alfalfa again. But look at what the conclusion says. The conclusion says, stop using chemical fertilizers. What? Why? Why can't I just grow alfalfa again? And on top of that, you know what? I'll feed my alfalfa chemical fertilizers. Right? Do you see? This argument really has just makes no sense at this point. You know what we know what we actually need to do is we actually need to grow alfalfa again, right? Grow this green manure crop. So what must be true in order? See, now you got to flip around. You have to help the argument. What must be true in order for this argument to even have a chance? Well, it must be that, right? You must prevent both of these things from happening, from being able to simultaneously happen, right? That's the only reason you're going to get to abandon the use of chemical fertilizer. You have to say, in order to grow alfalfa, right? You must abandon the use of chemical fertilizers. You must, right? You got to say this in say the weakest way, right? Which is what E says. Many, if not all, farmers in the region will not grow green manure crops unless group 3 negates sufficient. Get rid of the not. If you grow, then they abandon the use of chemical fertilizers. Abandon the use of chemical, right? And now this whole thing is modified by many, if not all, farmers. This thing is true for, right? This relationship that growing green manure crops necessitates the abandonment of chemical fertilizers for many farmers, right? It's very weak, which is precisely what we need for a necessary assumption. I do want to point out this, if not all, is sort of redundant, right? Because we know that if you just said many, think about the difference. Many farmers, well, what is many, right? Couldn't many conceivably include all? Right? If I say many farmers are nice, turns out all farmers are nice. I didn't say anything wrong. I just said many farmers are nice. Right? See, it already baked into the meaning includes potentially all. So to stress this is not really relevant. I know why it's here. It's here to confuse us, to get us to spend some extra couple seconds thinking about this, right? So anyway, many farmers, some. It's got to be true. This relationship has to hold for at least some farmers, for at least many farmers, right? Otherwise, how can you conclude that you need to abandon chemical fertilizers? Right? That's why E is right. Now, the only other answer choice that sounds like E is this, A is the doppelganger answer choice that, most, also a redundant use of all, right? Because again, baked into the meaning of most captures all, right? Review the lessons on, most, many, some most meanings, if you don't understand why. But most farmers in the region who abandon the use of chemical fertilizers will periodically grow alfalfa. Look, most, right, this relationship, abandon chemical fertilizers implies grow. This relationship is true for most of the farmers, right? I don't need this relationship to be true. I don't need this to be true for most farmers. I don't need it to be true for any farmer, right? Because look, I mean, you can't just say, here's one way for them to grow alfalfa again, right? To abandon use. Okay, that's fine, right? That's one sufficiency condition for them to grow this. But let's not forget that to improve the soil structure, what you need is to grow this, which you can grow this with or without abandoning this, right? This A just tells you, look, if you abandon it, you'll grow it. Okay, fine. What if I don't abandon it? Sufficiency failed, rule irrelevant. I can still grow it. Do you see how this is not necessary? This is just, it's not necessary, right? I mean, of course, you can spend, I don't know, probably like an hour talking about why it's not necessary. The point is, the LSAT writers get to be very irresponsible with constructing wrong answer choices, right? They construct the right answer choice. Like, oh, it's a sum of this, right? And then like, oh, let's just switch the sum for most. And then let's just flip these two around. I bet that'll confuse the hell out of everybody. And it does. It does confuse a lot of, everybody. So anyway, that's why, again, it's just better to know what you're looking for up front. B is also fairly attractive. It says, applying chemical fertilizers to green manure crops such as alfalfa has no positive effect on their growth. And if you choose B, you're probably thinking, oh yeah, this has to be true, right? Because if God forbid it has some positive effect, if applying chemical fertilizer has a positive effect on alfalfa growth, then no, don't abandon it, right? See, but here you're forgetting, or maybe you're conflating two different ideas. We care about improving soil structure, not how well alfalfa is growing, right? It could still be the case that if you apply chemical fertilizer to alfalfa, then you're actually nullifying all of the soil structure repair work that alfalfa would have been doing. Right now, alfalfa is just destroying the soil even more because that's the price you pay to grow super well, right? And it itself is growing super well. Now it no longer repairs the soil structure, it just degrades the soil structure even more. That's entirely possible, right? So here, negating answer choice B does nothing to our argument, does not wreck our argument, because whether or not alfalfa grows well, that's a totally different idea from whether or not alfalfa is repairing the soil structure. Right? C says the most important factor influencing soil quality of a farm is soil structure. So I don't really know what it's doing here. So soil structure is an idea we had. Now we have this notion of soil quality and the most important factor. I don't know. I don't need this to be true. Chemical fertilizers themselves have a destructive effect on the soil structure of a farm. Now, if you say this, right, I think this strengthens the argument because you're just saying that chemical fertilizer is just bad. Okay, fine. You say that, then yeah, I think the argument's probably stronger that you do need to abandon chemical fertilizer. But that's not the question. The question is whether this is a necessary assumption. Must it be true that chemical fertilizers themselves have a destructive effect? No, it doesn't. It doesn't have to be true at all. Chemical fertilizer could just simply be neutral on farm fields, right? But you know where the quote-unquote destructive effect actually comes from is that it makes farmers not do this, right? You see, that's not any chemical effect, any biological effect it has on the soil ecosystem, right? It's purely a psychological or behavioral effect it has on humans to make farmers not grow this anymore. And as a result, that causes soil degradation, right? You see, so D is absolutely not necessary.